There are two types of time values. When we talk about time value of money. There's something called a future value and something called present value. Within each of these, you also have what we refer to as single sum amounts and annuities. Right now, I'm going to talk about single sum, but I'm going to talk about both future value and present value of a single sum, okay, a single sum of money. And future value and present value are kind of what they sound like. I know, let's say that if I'm going to give you some examples in a minute, but for future value, how much will something that I know the number today, how much would that be in the future? Some future amount we're trying to calculate. The opposite would be present value. I know what this value is going to be in the future, but what would it be if I could put it in present value? What would it be today, right now? Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples we can work through with future value and present value of single sums, one lump sum. So you're getting this one time, whether it be in the future or in the present. Okay, and then in another video we'll talk about what an annuity is and how that's different. Okay, so let's say that you have $10,000 that you want to put in savings. I don't know, you've been, keeping all your change and stuffing it under the mattress. So you got $10,000 and you're going to go invest it in some type of an investment, okay? And let's say that the investment will earn you 6% interest and that we're going to compound that annually. So it's just going to do once a year, okay? Annual compounding. But it will compound. All right, I want to know how much I'm going to have, because the $10,000 is a present value. That's what it's worth right now today. I want to know how much I'm going to have in the future. So let's do a couple of different calculations. So all of these are future value of a single sum. That's what we're doing right now. Okay, future value of a single sum. All right, so let's look at, okay, how much would we have in 5 years? Let's do that. So in 5 years, what would the 10,000 have grown to be? And we're not going to put any more in it. We're just going to put one lump sum, 10,000. We're going to put it in this investment, or think of a savings account if you want to, and we're just going to leave it alone. We're going to let it earn interest, but that's it. We're not going to add anything else to the principal of this, okay? So how we can do this, now you can actually do a future value calculation with a formula. I tend to use future value tables because they're just easier. And we all like easy. Now, again, it is nice to know the formula and it makes sense. It's not super complicated. But I like to use the tables, and they have what we call future value or present value, depending on which one, factors. They have time value factors for us. So we need to know what to look up in the tables. So if you'll look at the table, and you'll see that the tables have different headings. Some of them say future value, some of them say present value. The ones for a single sum will say future value of $1 or future value of 1. The present value will say the same thing, except it says present value of $1 or present value of 1. Those are the ones for single sum. When we get to annuity, you'll notice that they say future value of an annuity of $1 or future value of an annuity of 1, or present value of an annuity of 1 or present value of annuity of $1. So you need to make sure, number one, if you're going to use the tables, you're on the right page of the table, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing that you need to know to pull your factor is, what are you looking for in these tables? Well, there's two things you need to know for the tables. You need to know the period. How many periods are you going to compound interest? How many times is it going to compound? And then you also need to know the rate at which it's compounding. Okay, so we've got 6% interest and it's compounding annually, so once a year. And this is for 5 years. So how many times will it accrue or earn interest? Should be an n equal to 5. So 5 times we're going to have the interest. And the rate, since it compounds annually, the principal amount, the I amount, okay, sometimes you'll see this as a R, then the rate you're looking for is 6%. Okay, so when you look in the table, that's what we want to look for. Across the top will be percentages. Down the side you'll see the periods, the ends. So we want to look for 5 and for 6%, and you should see that when you look at that, again, make sure you're on the right table. Future value of 1 or future value of $1, depending on the table that you're looking at, you should find a factor. The future value factor would be equal to 1.33823. So I'm going to use that factor to figure out the future value of this $10,000. So we're going to take the $10,000 that we put in, we're going to multiply it by the factor that we just looked up using how long it's going to compound and at what rate it's compounding. When we multiply that out, you're going to find that that's 13,382 and I think 30 cents if you round. Okay? So if you just left it in there for 5 years, you're going to earn about $3,400 worth of interest without touching it. It's just earning it on its own, compounding annually. Now let's do a couple of other comparisons. Let's look at, okay, if you say, well, it's rocking along pretty good, I don't need it, I'm just going to let it sit. Let's do that out for 10 years. Okay, this is 5 years out. What's the future value of that $10,000 if I leave it there for 10 years under the same circumstances? Okay, well, my factor is going to be different, so we need to go back to the table and look up the factor for this. What's your interest rate? Did we change the interest rate or how often it compounds? No. So we still need to look up the 6% column. And the row, this time though, needs to be 10. So the factor for this, you should find, is, if I got my number right, yeah, there it is. Okay, 1.79085. So now we take our 10,000, multiply it by that that future value factor. And that's going to tell us that in 10 years it would equal 17,908.50. So again, we leave it there, we earn about $8,000 over 10 years. And let's push it out all the way to 40 years. So we leave it there for a while. Okay? So that original $10,000, what would it grow to if we just left it sitting for 40 years and we didn't touch it? Didn't add anything to it, didn't take anything away. Okay, again, I need a future value factor. So we look in the tables. Still the 6%, compounding annually, but now it's for 40 periods. So now your factor is 10.28572. So you take the 10,000, multiply it by that factor, 572, and that should give you a number of 102,857.20. So if you left it there for 40 years, that initial 10,000, again, you're not touching it, you're not adding anything to it, you had 10,000, it will eventually grow to be over $102,000. That's what you get with compounding interest. Okay? All right, that's future value. Let's look at an example, though, with present value. It's kind of the opposite. All right, again, we're just doing a single sum. The 10,000 was one time, one lump sum, at one point in time. Okay? Now let's say, I don't know, come up with a fun example. Okay, let's say that some unknown rich relative dies and leaves you money. Okay, great. Let's say that they leave you in their will $50,000. Okay, but they leave it in trust and you won't get it for 10 years. So you got to wait 10 years, but then you'll have $50,000. Okay? But you could really use that money now to pay for your college tuition. So let's say that someone offers to purchase the trust from you, the rights to the trust. And they offer, let's say they give you 2 different offers. We'll compare 2 different offers. Let's say you get an offer of, I don't know. Let's say they offer you $25,000 for it. Would you take it? Or let's say they even offer you $30,000 for it. They say, well, we'll give you a little bit more. Okay, good deal or not? What do you think? Well, to know for sure if it's a good deal or not, we can use a present value calculation because we don't know the present value of this. $50,000, do we have it today? No. We're going to have it in 10 years. That is a future value. It will be $50,000 in 10 years. It's not $50,000 right now. Okay? So let's assume, or let's compare these two, but let's figure out what is the present value of this $50,000. And then we can compare it to this offer, see if that's a good offer or not, or if we just want to say, never mind, we'll wait for the $50,000. Okay? So, and we have to assume some interest. So let's just use our same 6%. Let's assume that we could invest money and earn a 6% return. Okay? So, now we need present value factors. Okay, so we can still use those tables, but now we need to go to the correct one. We need present value of 1 or present value of $1. It's one lump sum. It's $50,000 one time in 10 years. Okay, and again, if we're assuming that we could earn 6% return, then there's our interest rate. Okay, so again, let's just assume that this is compounding annually. Okay, so once a year it calculates interest, adds it onto the principal. Next year we calculate based on all of that with the original principal plus the interest tacked onto it. Okay, so $50,000 is our future value. We're going to take that $50,000 and we need to multiply it by a present value factor. So you'll go look in the present value tables and you're going to find 6% column, and you're going to find 10 years, and that should be a factor of 0.55839. So that means that your present value of that $50,000 is $27,919.50 if you had it today. So would the $25,000 have been a good offer? No, would have been a little short. How about the 30-day? Yeah, again, we have some assumptions. You're assuming that you can really get the 6% for the next 10 years, okay? If you could, then if you invested this right now, it would equal $50,000 in 10 years at 6% interest. So maybe you take the $30,000. Say here you can have the trust, okay? If, and also you talk about, hedging your bets a bit. What if things turn down and they don't earn 6%? Well, you did good, but what if it goes up to 20? Yeah, that's not going to happen. But, well, then you could have earned a lot more money, okay? But now, actually, this wouldn't happen because this was a set amount in the future. It's not quite that amount yet. It's earning up to the $50,000, okay? But just giving you some comparisons. Let me give you one other thing to consider. What if we didn't compound annually? What if we compounded this semi-annually? So twice a year it calculated interest and added it into the principal. All right? So how many times is it going to calculate interest now? Before, it calculated it 10 times because it was compounding annually. But now, that n should equal 20 because every 6 months, semi-annually, twice a year, it's going to calculate interest. So we have to change the n on this. Okay? That makes sense? I hope. Okay? But that's not the only thing you change. Because remember, what did we say about the 6%? That's stated as what? It's a per annum figure, which means that's based on an annual amount. So if this is a per annum, if this is 6% per year, we can't use 6%. The interest is going to have to be what? 3%. It's for 6/12 of the year, half of that. Okay? So when you go look in to pull your factor now, and you look at your present value factor, you should find with n of 20 and 3%, you get 0.55368. Okay, so it's not that much difference, but it is a little bit of a difference. So we take the 50,000 and we multiply it by the 0.55368, and this gives us a total of, if my number's right, 27,684. Okay? There we go. So these are, again, single sum calculations for both present value and future value.